we've had a lot of requests of people who have asked the question, what do I need to do to start my aesthetics practice? Like practically step by step. If you can, if you can hold my hand, like show me what to do to get my aesthetics practice started, that is what we're going to talk about today. This is Dr. Adam Sewell with the Medical Entrepreneur Podcast. So excited to have you here. All the aesthetic entrepreneurs out there reaching out. Just wanted to have a special episode today. So the thing about it is it's not extremely complicated to do. It does take a few steps. And some of these steps are things you may not be familiar with. And so for some people, it may look scary, but honestly, this is a very benign thing. It's not anything, you really can't make too many errors while you do it. It's very simple. And I've seen literally hundreds of CRNAs, nurse practitioners, RNs have basically gone and built their own basically aesthetics business to profit from their own efforts and labor, which for many people is very useful because so often in healthcare we do all the work and we get a very fraction of the profits. So starting with what we need to do first is step one is you need to build your very own company. And this is very, very simple. Basically, in order to build a company in almost any state, it is literally just filing a form with the state. It costs around, $125 to maybe $200, depending on where you live, which state, each state has their own fee. And you can do it all yourself by downloading there's a little form for each state that you can download that basically allows you to incorporate. You have to provide the kind of like the charter or the bylaws. Different states have different rules, but that you basically provide your operating agreement to the state, which shows that you're a corporation. And once you provide those things, you're good to go. You can also take the easy route and just have a company do it for you. There's many of them out there. The oldest one is the company corporation who basically files companies for you. But there's many, if you just do a search for build company in state name, you're going to see all sorts of websites pop up and fees anywhere between $49 to $150. Plus your state fee, and they will do everything for you. They'll even get your EIN number. They'll give you a binder. They'll give you everything you need. And so, you could be in for, $500 and basically have your entire company built that way. And what that does is that will get you a corporation. And to be clear, the ideal setup, depends on kind of your long-term goals. But for most people, you want to get a limited liability company or an LLC. And that is kind of an easy way to basically get a company that protects you from liability, because without having a corporate structure, you're basically working as an individual, which means that if anything goes wrong or someone wants to sue you, someone wants to try to take advantage of you, they could sue you as a human, as a person. And if they do that, then they get access to all of your personal assets, which is not what you want to do. You want to always have a corporation between you and those that you are serving or selling stuff to, because that corporation, the entire purpose of having a company is essentially to block people from going after your personal assets, because the company itself can be found to be doing something wrong. The company itself can get fines or whatever judgments against it. However, you as a person don't have to do that. So the company protects you, it shields you from that. So that being said, and all the time, and all the medical entrepreneurs I know, it's very uncommon to deal with lawsuits. It's somewhat rare. And the thing, though, is that I'll tell you that it's wise to have an LLC to help protect you, and is really the first step to get your practice going. The other thing that's a huge deal is once you have an LLC, it now opens up a whole possibility, literally a book full of opportunities to have more write-offs on your taxes. You see, as a W-2 employee, you have essentially no write-offs on your taxes, and the government has done a great job of taking away almost every single write-off that used to be available for employees. For a time in this country, there was actually a way that, if you had purchased a uniform to wear at work, that was a write-off. You didn't have to pay taxes on that because it was a uniform that you purchased for the sole for this whole purpose of going to work. So it wasn't like you're doing this for fun. It's not something you wore, on the weekends and nights. It was only for work, right? They've even taken that away now. But by having your own corporation, by having your own LLC, you now have a whole bunch of opportunities to basically increase the amount of write-offs you have, which will decrease your effective tax rate. The next thing is that once you file your company, what I would suggest you do is to immediately start building your digital presence. So thinking of what you want to call your aesthetics business, whether you want to call it a med spa, whether you want to call it a practice, whether you want to call it, Susan's Aesthetics, whether you want to call it, New Glow Beauty, whatever it is that you want to call it, start thinking of what you want to call it and go ahead and get a website lined out. Go ahead and get, your systems in place. And if you haven't checked it out already, you can use ClickPractice to do all those things. It's a cool software for entrepreneurs. But basically, get your digital presence up and running. This means your social media. This means your website. It means your email. And the reason why is because you're going to look significantly more professional for the next step. And so the next step for some people, depending on their state, is depending on what you are, whether you're an RN or a nurse practitioner or a PA, you may need a medical director in your state. And if you do, the next step is to go talk to them, make a deal with a medical director. Many medical directors are happy to do this. If you need connections to medical directors, please reach out to us. We'll connect you to some. But basically, most of the medical directors out there are very kind. They're definitely interested in working with you. You just need to show that you're competent in what you do and that you have a plan that makes sense to them. And so if you don't already have an aesthetics business plan, we have one for you. Email us and we'll hook you up with that. The next thing is that once you find your medical director, you'll need to set up a company for them. And so most of the time, what they'll do is you'll have one company for you, an LLC, and you might have a company for your medical director, a PLC, and then you'll build a relationship between the two. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Sometimes you may need to do this with an attorney. Ideally you can, but you also have to be very careful. You don't want to spend a ton of money in this one area here. And so basically you'll want to find some way to make a relationship between these two entities. And basically, the simplest relationship you can make is a staffing agency where your company, the LLC, is basically a staffing company that provides, in this case, maybe whatever you are, it could be like an RN, an APRN, et cetera, providing those services to the medical director's PLC where the money flows into that PLC and then it flows from the PLC to you. You'll control both companies. However, this setup here makes sure you're always in compliance with all the state laws, including the corporate practice of medicine, which is present in majority of states in the U.S., but not all of them. So without getting too much on the technical side, basically there's a couple ways that you set it up, but you're going to make a relationship between your company and your medical director's company. It could be a staffing agreement. It could be an MSO or management service organization. There's a lot of different ways to do it. There's pros and cons to each of them. Usually the simplest is just to build a staffing company initially. Then once you've done that, your next step is to go ahead and get yourself some good training. Now, I want you to notice that I didn't say go get training first. I said to do all this other stuff first. The reason is because for a lot of people, when you go to training, number one, you need to find a really good training. A lot of the training that's out there, especially from some of the more common, I call them big box trainers, is very, very poor. I'm just going to be straight with you. Like, there's a lot of big companies out there that do training. You might see them. They might be called, national something. They might be called, I don't want to say their name, but they've been training people for 20 plus years, that kind of thing. And when you really dig down into it, what you find is that the training you get there is you in a room with another 100 people, and you get very limited experience with hands-on. Half of your time is spent you doing didactics, which means like watching people, read slides about Botox and fillers and that kind of thing. And then you get a very, very limited time to do hands-on training where there's, maybe 6 or 7 people with one patient. You might get a chance to do a single line of injection. That's really not ideal. It's not a good way of training. So once you find a good training, what you want to do is you want to do it in this order, because if you have followed all the steps now, as soon as you finish your training, you can actually go back to your practice and start to see patients immediately. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to do training, wait 6 months while you set up your company, while you deal with your medical director, while you get your website up, while you're doing all that stuff. You don't want to be waiting that long and then say, oh man, now I'm ready to treat patients, but it's been 6 months since you did your training, so now you forgot it all because you didn't do it every day. So it's better to put your training kind of towards the middle of the process rather than the beginning, because you want to make it where you can do training, and when you get back to your location, to your hometown, that you can have patients waiting for you, even if they're just family and friends, so you can immediately start practicing, immediately start using those skills. And then finally, there's a lot of different ways to kind of get off the ground. So once you have your training done, it's under your belt, you're practicing on your neighbors, your friends and family, you can actually start doing mobile injecting if you want to. A lot of people have done this very successfully, having mobile Botox parties. It's a really great way to get started. There's a lot of demand for mobile Botox, and if you're just doing Botox or neuromodulators like Botox, it's fairly safe for you to do. And you can almost always find a group of usually women or moms or, whatever, realtors that want to have Botox. They all want to get it at the same time. They're going to be hanging out at this one location, and you can meet them there every, X number of months and do the Botox for all of them. And it's really kind of a fun and easy way to get started, and it builds your client base. Alternatively, what you can do, and what I would suggest, is when you want to have more of a physical presence, is go make a deal with another medical entrepreneur. So if you find another, like for example, an OB-GYN that owns their own office, see if you can make a deal with them to rent an office room from them. You can also send out letters to chiropractors in your area, letting them know that you're starting your own med spa and you're interested in renting a room from them. These are all very, very cheap things that you can do that cost you little to nothing, and will give you an immediate physical presence where you can actually practice. So you can have your own location, and in some cases, if you're renting a room from a chiropractor, your rent could be as low as $300 a month with a month-to-month contract. You can cancel at any time, so your risk is so minimal. Versus, classically, people were always told, go out, find an office, lease it for 3 to 5 years, build it up, have to pay for all the construction costs, etc. You don't want to do that. Do things on a shoestring budget. It's the best way to go, because it will force you to be profitable the entire time. Is it more of a difficult journey than deploying, a whole bunch of money or investing, thousands of dollars into your practice? Probably. But the thing is that by making yourself go through each of those steps, you're making sure that you build everything correctly, and you're doing it in a way that basically your efforts or your work that you're doing is essentially paying for the building of your business. And so if you do it that way, it's the most successful way. Now that you have a physical location, start to promote yourself. You have the website up from the very beginning. You're doing social media. The other thing I failed to mention before was that, when you actually have your digital presence you're building, you're doing your social media before you've ever done training, what's really great about that is as you are studying for your training, every concept that you learn is a great concept to share with your audience. So make a video about it. And it also helps you learn as well. So for example, if you're learning about the orbicularis oculi, the muscle that's here, and you're learning how to take care of crow's feet, you could talk about the different ways that you can treat crow's feet. You can talk about how this muscle is shaped, how the reason this muscle is so important is because it's a very flat muscle, and so you're going to do an injection like this or like that. Whatever it is that you're learning, tell your audience about it. And so not only does it help you remember what you're learning, but you're also building content that will make you look like an expert, and other people will see that content and say, wow, I never really thought about it like that. I didn't realize this muscle was so flat. I didn't realize that my needle needs to be superficial when I do these injections, whatever it is. So long story short, always get your digital presence up first, because you can make content for it all the way throughout. And then once you get to the level of promotions, you can do events. You can also build referral bases, and you can do more social media promotions. It's a whole different topic into itself. But this is probably the most simple way to get started. And just to review those steps one more time is number 1, build an LLC or corporation. It could be an LLC, could be a PLC. Whatever it is in your state. PLC just stands for professional limited liability company. In majority of states, there's really not a requirement to have one or the other. The PLC sometimes has better benefits, particularly as it relates to having more than one business partner that are professionals. There's certain things that are advantageous to that. But for if you didn't know what to do or you didn't know how to get started, just build an LLC. It's simple. Most businesses are LLCs. It's a great way to get started. Then the next thing is do your digital presence. Get yourself a website. Use Click Practice. Sign up for Click Practice. Get yourself a pre-made website. Get your social media up. Start posting interesting things about like what you're learning about the industry, about beauty. Start to build up your digital presence right away. Then next, go talk to your medical director. We have some scripts for you. We have ways you can find medical directors, all that kind of stuff. You need it, just email us. But then connect with your medical director, then help set up a relationship between you and your medical director. It could be just a simple agreement. It could be having 2 different companies. You could go, big style and make a management service organization, or you can keep it small and just do a kind of staffing arrangement. Whatever works for you, get that set up. Then the next thing is to go do training. And so what I say is try to find yourself some training that's extremely high quality, that has a low amount of people in the training where you get a lot of hands-on. If you ever use our training has 2 parts. The first part is all online. It's all the didactic stuff. So just to kind of give you an idea about training, most of the trainings that are out there, you don't do anything and then you show up for a weekend class, usually at a hotel, and I'd say 60 to 70% of your time is spent watching a guy read slides about the things that you're going to train on. So if you're training in neuromodulator or Botox, you're going to be watching a guy read slides about that for a couple hours. And then, and only then, do you go do hands-on. We don't do that in our training. Number one, you do all the didactic stuff online. You make sure you understand it. Make sure you know it cold. Then when you come in to see us, it's all hands-on. That's all we're doing, and we're focused on getting as much experience as possible for you, as much hands-on experience for you to practice with on real live patients, assessing them, injecting them, how to hold the needle, how to do this injection versus that injection. And that's where all the stuff starts to click. All the stuff you learn in didactics, now you're doing hands-on at a different time. It just all starts to click, and you're like, oh, I remember they said that, and so now I do this. So get yourself some training, then consider starting mobile or get a room in another professional's office. It has to be zoned medical because it's going to be, you're doing medical treatments there. So that could be a chiropractor. My personal favorite is chiropractors are everywhere. They're very business oriented. They often have a great patient base so they can refer people to you. And then finally, promote yourself by using events, referrals, and social media. So hopefully this helps and gives you some information as to how to get started. But if you follow these steps, these are the foolproof steps to start your very own aesthetic business. All right, guys, have a great day. And remember, one vision, one purpose, freedom through prosperity.